put the town's name on there, and we also needed to eliminate the language referring to no public use. And so the purchase and sale agreement that I signed last week does those two things, clears up easement language, and then sets us to where we can purchase the traffic circle from the Ziegler family. So with that agreement signed, the next step in this process is to get this to the RTM Rules Committee. That committee met last night, and the purpose of that discussion was for them to assign consideration of this land acquisition to RTM committees. It's PZ&H is going to be primary, and then F&B is going to be secondary. But importantly, what they're going to get copies of the purchase and sale agreement, but very importantly, their sole objective is for them to consider the acquisition of the land. There's actually no other sort of approval that we need from them. The reason is that the funds to purchase this are already part of the appropriation that was voted on by the RTM earlier this year. So we don't need a new appropriation to do this. So what they're going to do is look at the purchase and sale agreement, but really just focus on the one area where we need them to approve, which is the acquisition of the traffic circle. So a couple other things. As part of this process, we had to enter into a non-disclosure agreement with the Ziegler family and all the related attorneys. And the reason for that was that they felt that the negotiations with their buyer, all of that was all fairly sensitive, and they wanted to make sure that none of those negotiations were sort of made public during this process. As part of the PSA, they've stipulated that they want the non-disclosure agreement to endure beyond the signing of that purchase and sale agreement. And so we're under an obligation not to discuss any of the deliberations or processes that led to the agreement with this PSA. And so anyone who gets a copy of that agreement or has been party to all these negotiations, that NDA applies to everyone, and we're specifically not allowed to talk about that process. But we can talk about any aspect of the agreement itself, which is actually what's important, right? That's the document that got signed. That's what obligates the town, if you will. And so any aspect of the purchase and sale agreement can be discussed by this board or the RTM or anyone else. Just not all the negotiations that led up to that, and for reasons that we feel are understandable. So I guess in conclusion, where we are is we've made this acquisition of Great Island. The last little piece that we needed to get was the traffic circle that is the entrance to Great Island. We've acquired that for what we think is a reasonable price. By the way, the market value or the appraisal of the traffic circle was, I think, about $560,000. The final purchase price of the $792,000 included not just that, but all the soft costs and legal costs associated with that, and that's how we got to that number. Our general view is that the only alternative for us, aside from a negotiated settlement, was pursuing eminent domain. And that process would have been protracted and potentially much more expensive than where we ended up. I think it's actually a very good agreement, not just for us, but for the Ziegler family as well, to have that done cleanly and in this manner, as opposed to something that was more adversarial. So we feel we've got a solid agreement. We've cleaned up all the easements. We've got acquisition of this property. It is the final piece of the puzzle that clears up access to Great Island. And there's not going to need to be any more of this type of work or acquisitions of property subsequent to the approval of this. So as I said, we've got 2 RTM committees that are going to start their consideration of the land acquisition. In terms of calendar, so the Board of Selectmen approved this last night at their meeting. The RTM assigned it to committees last night. All of you are meeting today. I would point out that the Board of Finance, because there's no appropriation of funds, actually has no formal role in this process. Jim felt, as did I, that it was important to get it in front of this board, though, both to answer your questions, get your input, and hopefully get a sense of the board that this is the right thing for the town to pursue. As I've said, and Jim has said many times, transparency on something like this is really important. And even though this board has no formal approval process, I do know it's important for you guys to be informed. Great Island is a process that's going to go on for a long time in terms of development, and you will be asked to approve things in the future. And so keeping you informed on this is certainly something that's personally important to me, and I know to Jim as well. So you guys meeting tonight. The next meeting is planning and zoning. That's going to be on the 28th next week. So their objective is what's called a mandatory referral. And so anytime there's a land acquisition, one of the things you got to do is you've got to test that land acquisition against the town's plan of conservation and development, right? And that's a planning and zoning purview. The plan of conservation and development is a state mandated device, and that's something that we have to review, I think, every 10 years. But in that plan, it stipulates sort of the town's general strategy for things like this. And so planning and zoning will do a quick review of this acquisition. We don't expect it to be any problem because it's obviously associated with Great Island itself, but they're required to conduct that quick review, and that will be on the 28th. One other small thing that they have to address is Jeremy's approval of some lot line revisions, which the Ziegler family's having to make in their property, because when we buy the traffic circle, there's a couple of subdivisions within the Ziegler property that lose access to a road, and so adjusting the property lines corrects that, and they will approve that at Planning and Zoning as well. On December 6th, there's going to be a meeting of the Environmental Protection Commission. The reason for that is that if you look at the traffic circle, there's a road that goes into it by the stables. There's another road that goes kind of south over the causeway. That road goes over one of the protected areas, of environmentally sensitive areas that are precluded from future development. And because it's over an environmentally sensitive area, anytime you have a road or an asset like that where there's an easement language change, who knew? But that language change requires EPC review and approval, and that'll take place on December 6th. And then finally, the last meeting is going to be the RTM meeting on December 11th. That's the night of the state of town addresses. But on their agenda, hopefully after the committees have considered the land acquisition, they will vote to formally approve the acquisition of land itself. And once that happens, really the committee is going to, I think, ramp up its work. Things have been a little bit slow with that group simply because, well, this access to Great Island was still consuming most of our time. And now that that work is finished, I think that committee the work of that committee can proceed apace. So that's the update that I wanted to provide for you. The resolution, which I won't read, that we voted on with the Board of Selectmen last night, basically approves the purchase of the land as well as the easement modifications and gives me the authority to effect any paperwork appertaining thereto. So appreciate the time to address you folks this evening. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
John,
Yes,
when will the transaction close?
So if the RTM votes to approve this on the 11th, was it 5 days? It'll be a week, within the week following the 11th, I believe. That's correct. Yeah. So pretty quick. And once that's closed, by the way, the PSA itself, we can get you copies of all that, but those will be watermarked copies that would go to you individually. They've asked us not to share the PSA agreement publicly until the transaction actually closes. And so once the transaction closes following RTM approval, the PSA agreement is actually going to be a matter of public record posted on the website, and anybody can review it at that point. It's just up to that point we want to be careful about it being sent around.
John,
Yes.
dividing the payment to 10 for the acquisition of land and the other amount to the buyer of the Ziegler property, does that run into any issues with the language in the bond appropriation?
So that's a good question. We did the one slight nuance on the bond resolutions is as follows. So when the original bond resolution was passed by the RTM, this is the $103 million, right? Typically when the bond resolutions go before the RTM, there's the official bond resolution that's prepared by bond counsel, and then our attorneys, Wayne and his colleagues, will prepare a shorter summary of that will accompany the bond resolution. And so when all that was sent out with the RTM for their approval, it was initially just Wayne's summary. It was not the actual bond resolution itself. The oversight was noticed. It was quickly sent out to RTM members. Most of them got it, at least half. But we worried for a while about that because there's a very slight wording difference between those two, the summary resolution and the actual bond resolution. The summary refers to purchase of property that's owned by the Steingraus family. This property is owned by the Ziegler family, and it doesn't, right? The resolution that was technically passed says Steingraus family. So we checked with both bond counsel and with Curtis Brinkerhoff and posed that question directly to them. In their opinion, and they're preparing a letter to that effect that will circulate both to you as well as the RTM. In their opinion, the whole focus of the bond resolution was the acquisition of this property and everything required to make this work. And so there is a sense from them that the wording of the resolution that was passed is in fact sufficient for the acquisition of this land, even if the money is split the way we described, and that no sort of further appropriation or reappropriation is required. But the short answer to your question is yes, the bond resolutions are adequate.
So it sounds like the interpretation of the language is that even though the payment is being split, it's de facto effectively all being used for the acquisition of the land.
Correct.
Yeah.
Other questions? Taylor?
Does this set of easements or the original purchase allow for us to widen the entrance and the road that leads into the property?
Yes. So the main road that comes up from Rings End Bridge to the traffic circle is referred to in all our paperwork as 23A. And if you start referring to that, you'll never be confused with Great Island Road or anything else, as I've learned. So 23A is that short section of road. It's very nice. You go up to it. It's got kind of a cobblestone ditch on either side. And right at the entrance, right at Rings End Bridge, you'll see that there are these two sort of stacked columns of stone, very, very nice. So we need to widen that road. And the reason we need to widen it, it's about 17 feet wide right now. And in order for there to be two-way traffic, it needs to be about 22 feet, so we're going to have to widen that. We have acquired enough property to do that. There is planning underway that will help us do that and get the widening of that road just right and preserve some of the coolness about it in terms of the little cobblestone ditches. They're going to move one of the pillars that's in front that kind of creates this gate effect. And we think that when they get finished, it'll look quite nice and very close to the original. But it will provide for two-way traffic to get up to the traffic circle. Once you're in the traffic circle, the road that goes into Great Island will be just one way. That obviates the need for us to do a lot of additional road work to make all of that two-lane. I think one of the things that the committee is going to have to consider is, for example, just how much road traffic do we want on Great Island, right? You could make the case that maybe cars only go so far into Great Island and that the rest of it is sort of unspoiled by that. But these are all deliberations that the committee is going to have to go through itself to see what the right answer is on that. But short answer to your question, yes, we will have the ability to modify that road to get it to the width we need. What else? Paul?
Will the Ziegler family still have access to the circle and exit that way?
Yes, that was the purpose of sort of easement language modification, right? So they would have really access to the traffic circle like anyone else. It's going to, as Jim has said, it's not a public road, it is a private road with public access. And so once we take possession of all that, really anybody can go on it. The road has public use. So the easement language specifically clarifies all that, so they will have access to that, yes. John?
John, do you expect there'll be further discussion regarding the excess of the purchase price and the original $103 million?
Yeah, it's a good question. That appropriation is sitting out there. Again, we've spent $85 million for the property. There's $103 million that's been appropriated. And as everyone knows, once money's been appropriated, it can be spent. The Board of Selectmen could go out and spend that money right now. My personal view is that the way we get around this is obsessive transparency on all this. I mean, part of the reason for coming to this board, when you have nothing really to approve other than providing a sense of this transaction, is to make sure that everybody sees exactly what we're doing and we have sort of a fulsome review and discussion of all that. Some have suggested that, well, maybe what we do is rescind these bond resolutions and reappropriate all of this. I'm going to continue to take the pulse of people and see what they think about it. My hope is that through explanations like this, answering all the questions, they'll see each time that we come in for an expenditure that we may not be going back for an additional or a supplemental appropriation, but the level of detail that we're going to present and the communications that we're going to have will be as if we were asking for an appropriation, because again, we want everybody to be involved in this decision making. I'd also like to see, frankly, any significant or even minor expenditure of that money to be thoroughly vetted with the Great Island Committee and then passed up to the regular boards, and so as if it were an appropriation. And so you can expect either that committee, which Monica will now chair going forward, or me coming before you to answer questions about that and say, hey, this is something that we're about to do. I'll take a sense of this board and see what you think. So there will be no shortage of communication on any of this. And for now, my recommendation would be to leave that appropriation in place, and let's just talk about it as we spend it on this property. Other questions? Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. The only other thing I'd mention is that we do plan pretty significant outreach to the RTM committees as they go through and consider this property. All their meetings will be in public as well, but if at any time during any of those discussions, questions arise on this board where you would like either an answer from me or from Jim or for someone else, or you would like us to come back and present something to this board, done. Say the word and we'll make it happen. Okay? Thank you, friends.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Okay. So I guess at this point, I would entertain a motion to recommend to the RTN that they approve the acquisition of the traffic circle, and then recommend that they approve the modification of the easements. I think you all should have received a copy of the purchase and sale agreement. As John pointed out, let's just remember that is subject to the NDA. So until this closes, the week of December 11th, let's just keep that all confidential. So I guess I entertain a motion. Paul moves. John seconds. So all those in favor of recommending to the RTM that they acquire the property and modify the easements. Dan?
Yeah.
Dan?
Yeah.
Are you there, Dan?
Reaching for my mute button. Yeah, aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. John, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, so the next regular, and so having discussed all of that, I don't think there's a need, unless others feel a need to go into executive session to discuss anything else. We've really discussed everything I think that we really can pursuant to this, and hopefully John's explanation was very transparent. So let's move on to the transfers. The first is to discuss and take action. Thanks, John. Discuss and take action on a request for a transfer of $65,000 to Monroe Fire Department for the conversion to a natural gas project.
Good evening. My name is Mike Burkhardt. I'm the president of the Monroe Fire Department. And I'm here to request a transfer of $65,000 from the Board of Finance Reserve to the Monroe Fire Department natural gas conversion project. Just to give you a little history on the project, this was originally planned and budgeted in the 2020 budget cycle, and we've had $225,000 approved for the project. The project was delayed and put on hold for various reasons over the last few years, most of which were out of our control. I can go into more detail on that if you'd like. But we finally got to the point this year where we wanted to, move forward with it. So we started seeking out quotes and estimates from various vendors just to kind of get an idea of what we were talking about, and pretty quickly realized that we were going to be way over budget. So at that point, we were north of $400,000. So went to Jen and Kate and asked for their guidance on how to proceed. They put us in touch with Tony and Dave Savini from the town. And, we kind of looked at the project and asked what could we cut out of this and just keep it to purely changing the heating and air system and the hot water system to converting that to natural gas. So we had some other things in the project originally that we were hopeful to get, which was converting our backup generator, which is currently diesel, to natural gas. We wanted to add a separate heating system to the chief's office, which just has bad heat in it. We wanted to add some Modine heaters on the truck floor. And decided that we would cut that out for now. We suggested that we put that in a separate budget request at a future date, which we plan on doing. So we were able to cut a good amount out of the project. The generator itself was $70,000+. So we got it to now, between what we've already spent on some engineering, we did already remove the diesel tank, so we have a temporary diesel tank currently for the generator. And then, we put the three major parts of the project out to bid, which are the HVAC, the plumbing, and the electrical work. It took a few tries to get the HVAC bid, but we're at a point right now where we feel like we have acceptable bids on those three areas of the project. And then there's some additional, miscellaneous work, some carpentry, masonry work for patching holes in walls, and then the removal of the 1,000-gallon heating oil tank we currently have. And we're at, right now, estimating that this project will come in at $290,000. So again, we're looking for another $65,000 to move forward with the project. We still believe in the project, between the cost savings of moving from heating oil to natural gas. But probably more importantly, is we have pretty critical components of our heating and air system that are either at or past their useful life. So this would replace an air handler and a condensing unit, which are both 24 years old. It would replace the boiler and hot water tank, which are both 30 years old. And then all the miscellaneous heating coils, electrical, plumbing work associated with that. So we're looking for the additional $65,000 to move forward.
A couple questions. If you got to go ahead today, how long to get it in?
So the only thing we're running up to now, and I'd have to talk with the HVAC people, is we're obviously getting into the winter. So for the building to be out of heat for multiple days just wouldn't work. So I think at this point, potentially it could get pushed to the spring. But again, I need to talk to them. We're ready to move as fast as they say they can do it. In some discussions with the key vendors in this, they want to help. They see it's a fire department. They want to help. So I think there's some willingness to hold the pricing if it does go to the spring at this point.
So Jen, on the original 225,000, 165 came out of, there's a bonding resolution for it?
Yes.
The 60, did that come from the town-funded NFD capital?
Yes.
So that was their small capital, if you will?
Well, it was just part of the annual capital budget back in 2020.
Yes.
Okay.
Mike, just this is more out of curiosity. You mentioned, or at least it's here in the write-up, that you had trouble getting vendors to bid on certain aspects of the project. Were you able to get at least a couple of?
We got a
bidders?
couple. Yeah, we did. We got a couple on every aspect of it. The HVAC was the most difficult. Just a lot of people saying they're too busy or short-staffed and just weren't looking to take on a project right now. So we ended up with 2 bids on the HVAC. One was significantly better than the other.
Yeah, we're finding the exact same thing on the Henley Homes Royal project, and HVAC is one of the tight ones.
Yeah.
So sorry if I missed this. This is the cost. Does this replace all the heating and air conditioning equipment as well, or is that going to be a further?
No, so this would just replace so we have 2 condensing units and 2 air handlers. This would replace, the older of those 2. It would replace the boiler, replace the hot water heater, but none of the, guts or, the actual ductwork or anything like that.
So the things that are nearing the end of their useful life that was written, that's all being replaced?
That's all being
as a
replaced.
part of this?
Yes.
And what's the annual estimated savings?
On the heat, on just converting to the gas,
Yeah.
is $3,000 a year. But again, it's more, like I said, more important. I think we have equipment that needs to be replaced.
So Jen, the incremental amount that we're appropriating now, we're not going to ask for bonding authority for that amount, just given the size?
Yeah, given the size.
Okay. And in terms of the dollars that were already spent, was the original bonding resolution, did it include, in connection with the hookup of the natural gas, did it also include HVAC work and so forth associated with that?
Yes.
Okay. So this money would be coming out of the Board of Finance capital reserve within the reserve fund for capital non-recurring?
Were there further savings on top of the $3,000 a year that we anticipated when we decided to put this much money into it?
There's continued,
I think it was higher initially back in 2019, 2020 when they first started looking at it.
Right.
But I think prices have come a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're going to stay close.
Right.
And there's, the additional maintenance and upkeep of dated equipment as well.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll accept the motion to transfer $65,000 from the Board of Finance capital reserve into the project account for the conversion to natural gas of the Darien Fire Department. Dave moves. Rob seconds. All those in favor? Dan?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, the next item is to discuss and take action on a request for a transfer of $337,090 for the Darien Police Department female locker room expansion. Long time coming.
What's that?
Long time coming.
Yes. It's been a long project. Good evening. I'm Captain Allison Hadema from the Darien Police Department. I've been working on this project for a couple months now. And just to give you some background, I'm sure you've read this, but just to give everyone the background again. So our building was renovated back in 2010. At that time, they had redone the locker rooms and given the females 10. Males had, I believe, 50 lockers. And we are at the point where we've expanded our female staff of officers more than 10. So currently, I have been out of my locker for about 6 months as we hired our female that made us to 11. We are hiring, now since then, we have lost a female a week or two ago, but we are now getting another one as of December 5th. So we'll be back in the situation we were where I am still out of my locker. Let's see. So originally we came to the police, or to the Board of Finance. We mentioned we were looking into this expansion of our female locker room. And we originally asked for, I think it was about 60 grand up front. And that was for our architect fees and the purchase of permanent lockers because they go on back order and it takes a while to get them. We were approved for 50, so we had the 30, or the 20 for the lockers and the 30 for our architect, and at the end, we were gonna come back and ask for the remaining amount for the architect after that. Since then, we've put a bid out, and we've gotten 3 responses. The lowest one came in at about $371. Do you wanna discuss this, or should I keep going?
Sure, we can discuss that. Mark Allen, Jakunsky Humes Architects. We're the architects for the renovation, and we are also the architects for the current expansion project. We took a number of bids. We had a good number of bids, and the low bid was from A. Secondino and Sons. They're a reputable outfit. We've used them, but we've done jobs with them before, and we've recommended to the town that they move forward with this group. We sat down and had like a bid review with Secondino, and they made a number of suggestions, and we put our heads together, and we were able to reduce the scope of the temporary locker rooms that the ladies have to use while the permanent locker rooms are being renovated. So we reduced the scope of that temporary locker room and went back to the low bidder, and he said he could do that job for $306,000. And I think you have a couple of other items that are in addition to that, including my construction administration fee of $8,000. Mm-hmm. There's a few other items that you're asking for.
Right, 2,500 DPW contractor on access control, the contingency cost of $20,000, and then the 8 for your fee. So that brings us to $337,090.
And does that include the 20 odd that we approved for the lockers? The actual purchase of them?
No, that was a previous appropriation.
But this does include the 30 for the design, right? I guess the 30,500?
No.
No, that was a previous as well. This only, in that appropriation, our contract is only written from schematic design through the bid process. But there's also a phase that comes after that, and that's construction administration, where, we look at shop drawings, days of our contract that's in the ask for tonight.
Got it. So the portion of the 30,000 that you received was to design this and get it to the bid.
Correct.
And then this is to administer it. So as we think about the total contract, it's really 337 plus 50.
For the total cost of
The
Right.
total cost of the
Right.
full contract.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, we sort of broke it up that way for very good reasons, because in this particular project, one of the potential problems would be the long lead time for the lockers that I think Alex spoke about. On some of our other projects, the lead time for these lockers are out, 16, 24 weeks. And currently, the lockers that the police put on order, they are constructed, they're stored, and they're ready to ship. So it should be just, a matter of a week or two to get those lockers here.
And the cost of those lockers, are they part of the original 50?
Yes.
Yes.
How many will we have in the end?
We're adding 7, so we'll have 17 female.
17 total. That should hold you for a while.
We bounced around a number, because I remember I took a visit. I don't know, did you visit? Somebody took a visit with me when this happened. I forgot who it was. Might have been just Kevin.
Yeah.
Might have been just Chief, sorry. And I thought we were bouncing around a number of like 165. How did we go from, and maybe that was a spitball number. Maybe it was just like a dart. But we've kind of gone, we're spending, maybe I'm just looking at this incorrectly. We're spending $370,000 for 7 lockers.
7 lockers, rearrangement of walls.
I know, I think
To
that's,
accommodate.
because I remember Chief showing, we got to bust out a wall, a couple of walls. Like
Yep.
we're going
We're
kind of
redoing ductwork.
toward the men's one
Yes.
and expanding that way.
Yep,
Right.
removing access control. I mean, it's really, there's a lot of trades that are involved. We're also adding a shower to the project. So it's a number of different trades. And it's one of those projects that, it's got all those trades involved, and you have to hire them all, even though each one of them doesn't have a huge task to do.
So Captain, what happens if we go past this number, right? So the 30 for 30 initiative, give it 50 officers, 30%, we're sitting at 18. What happens if we go past that? Or
Right. So we've discussed going on a larger scale renovation. It was in a discussion with the commissioners and things like that, but it's never gone anywhere, really. I think down the road, if we do get past that, we would have to break into where our gym is and kind of expand the men's and the women's locker room to have bunk rooms there, and then move the gym to the basement. I think that would be the next phase. I'm not sure how long it will take to get
to that number?
that, but we do, like myself included, there's another 2 or 3 females that are kind of towards the end of their career, so I can see us cycling through. But you just never know.
Never know, right.
Yeah,
So we currently have 17 lockers. I think our total sworn staff is like 51, 52.
50, it'll be 52, yeah.
And I think Rob's point, I mean, we can't go back in time 14 years, but I think, when you're designing highly intricate buildings like this, I think it really pays for us to think forward in terms of, being able to plan for this. Because while it's 370 for, I know we say sort of just 7 lockers, but it's all the stuff that needs to be done. And all that stuff is much more expensive than just the $20,000 for, the $2,000, $3,000 per locker.
Right.
So I think it is important that we really, have we thought through the what-ifs? And is this being designed in a way where the what-ifs will be a lot less painful? Or expensive, I should say?
Well, I think we're nearly doubling the amount of lockers that we have, and I think that so the increase in women that you've had since 2010 to now is probably
Well-
5, 6.
Right. I would say
so
5.
So to go through that additional 7 lockers is likely to be at least another 15 years or so. Who knows what the future brings, but.
And by then, we'll need another headquarters.
And
I believe the 30-30 initiative, I think that brings us to about 16 females.
I think it's 16, 17.
Right.
What's the time, if we approve this tonight, what's the time frame
Yeah.
getting started? Bids?
Well,
Instant.
Ellie wants it
Right,
yesterday,
after that?
but
No, slowing down because of winter or anything
No,
like
no.
that, right? This is all,
assuming
Inside.
you approve it tonight,
yep.
next week is the selectmen's approval. We have the contractor ready to go. We've recommended that they be hired, and they're ready to go.
And how long do they say till completion date?
And we've planned the project out for 4 months. I don't believe it should take that long. I think it's in the contractor's best interest to get it done as quick as possible. It's gonna make, better sense for him.
And I think since we changed the locker location, the
Yep.
temporary locker space, it would be much shorter.
Yeah.
So we're not building a new area. We have one that we're putting lockers in.
And in terms of the contract bid for 306, we've been through that contract, we're sure, like, we know that covers everything. The contract, everything's included in there, so just as I think about sort of contingency and whether that's sufficient or, too small or too large, the lockers are paid for,
Contingency is
right?
6%, which is
Yeah.
usually pretty generous in our experience. It is an existing building, but it's also a building that we put together, so we don't anticipate any surprises when we.
Yeah, I guess I was just maybe asking the other way, since the lockers are already purchased, we're just waiting to be dropped off.
Yep.
All of the design fees are done, and we have a firm, hard bid that, reflects everything intricate that this guy needs to do.
Yes.
And we think 20,000 is still the right number?
Yes, absolutely.
Do we have a gender-neutral solution? Do we need one?
What do you mean by that?
Like, is there any option where we're gonna need to have another option? Or is everyone comfortable with men's and women's?
I mean, yeah. Who knows in the future what will happen? So far, it's been okay. But yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I think that may be a future project. I mean, possibly.
I think it's a valid question, and I think you guys should probably think about it. Just, you gotta throw it out there.
There have been discussions, what's comfortable for that person, right? I don't know if it would be their own spot. I think they would choose
Yeah.
what is more comfortable for them.
I just, like I said, I think you
Yes.
just think about it.
Oh, it's been thought about.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't
True about every
spent,
school in town.
What?
True about every school in town.
Yeah.
I haven't spent a lot of time in the women's locker room at the police department, but in terms of the additional 7 that we're buying, can the locker room actually take more than 17 lockers? Or is 17 literally use every spot on the wall?
When we looked at this building, 13 years ago, we put a lot of stuff in a very small space. And you're sort of in the same position right now. The site's not very big, and it's not getting any bigger. And I think, we're doing what we can to maximize what you have there. The next step has to be the workout room.
Right. I think if we need to expand any further, we would take over the workout room
Yep.
and move that.
Right. Come up with a different idea for that. And it could be an off-site room, it could be downstairs, it could be,
Right.
Okay. Any other questions?
Only more around the financing. Jen, it looks like we're doing about half ARPA funds here.
Oh, yeah.
Where are we on the ARPA allocations? Because given the time constraints of having to use all those monies, would we consider using more ARPA funds in this case?
This wipes out the ARPA contingency that's in place right now, which is wide split 50-50. when we get to the financial report, there's some that are highlighted because those projects are complete. We've done gotten a status update from all the departments with active projects. So there's some that can be closed, there's some where they have funds that can be returned to contingency because they're not going to be needed. That totals about $95,000. So we're going to bring that whole process back through the ARPA committee, talk about potential reallocations of those. But there is the potential, as we free up ARPA funds, we could shift the funding from the RFCNRE money and use ARPA instead. Or we can use, as we free up ARPA funds, we can use those ARPA funds for other capital projects.
And we can do that after it's been expended?
Yeah.
Sort of retroactively?
Yep.
Where does it show up on the ARPA grant list? Because I didn't see it.
Where does what show up?
This project.
You haven't approved it yet, so it's not on the list.
Okay.
It's just the contingency amount that shows
Okay.
up there.
So is this subject to the ARPA committee?
No, when we met, the first time we reconvened, which I think it was over the summer, and we did the first round of reallocations, this was one that Kate had on her list of when we have more information, if the dollar amount works, we want to use ARPA funds, and the committee was in agreement of it was a good use of ARPA funds. So we didn't feel the need to go back to the ARPA committee on it because they kind of already blessed the concept. But like I said, we're going to be going back with closeout so we can discuss allocating that to new projects or putting more towards this from ARPA.
Okay. So half from ARPA, half from the capital reserve?
Right.
Potentially more from ARPA.
Yes.
Yes.
And potentially less if we don't use the contingency. So, okay, any other questions for the team? Well, thank you guys, thank you for your patience in
Thank
terms of
you.
having this all put together here. Any other questions from the board? Okay, so I'll accept, if I can do, I guess, a joint motion to transfer $168,519 from the ARPA contingency fund and $168,571 from the Board of Finance capital reserve within the reserve fund for capital non-recurring expenses to the DPD locker room project. Rob moves. Paul seconds. All those in favor? Dan?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thanks, Dan. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the third item is discuss and take action on a request of a transfer of $40,000 for the railroad platform shelters. And while Ed's kind of coming up to the podium, Jen, just to clarify, this is coming from the parking capital fund. So these are not necessarily tax dollars. These are receipts that we've brought in from parking revenues.
Good evening. Ed Gentile, Director of Public Works for the town of Darien. We have in front of you a request for a transfer, as the chairman just pointed out, coming from the parking fund revenue balance. The $40,000 will go towards the platform shelters. I was with the project starting at the Darien train station recently. And the kickoff meeting, I finally was able to get an invoice from the shelter company, which, if you recall, part of this project to put some type of canopy along the sheltered, the unsheltered platforms was a compromise between the town and the DOT. We came to a resolution of we put these shelters, they look like bus shelters, they're going to go along with the architecture features that are there currently on the station, but there'll be 3 10 by 20 shelters placed along the New York bound side, and there'll be 1 of the shelters placed on the New Haven bound side. So we started off with a placeholder a couple of years ago, as I stated in the transfer, asked for some additional funds going into last year, and with the invoice now I have about $40,000 to cover. The difference was a delivery charge of these units. It's about $30,000 to deliver them. to the town of Darien, which I thought was a little high, and about $2,500 for shop drawings to be approved, so they could put them on the plan. So I have that in front of you, requesting that transfer.
So total cost is about 215 altogether?
That's correct.
And this is a permanent solution, right? Not something temporary?
This is the permanent solution.
DOT didn't contribute anything, right, Ed?
They
Or did
did. They helped with the design portion of it. There is a part of the project where they're going to have to make these connections from the shelters to the new FRP platforms, which is a plastic platforms. They're heated, so their design really had to change a little bit to get us to what we were looking for, which was some protection for the commuters along the rail. But other than that, we bought the shelters. They are going to have the contractor install them. They're paying for the installation.
Ed, I know that this came up on some prior items that we were talking about, around, like, we effectively lease the parking lots, if you will, right, from the state?
Correct.
And although that lease is expired, I think paid $1 or whatever, but it's, have we made any progress further, just thinking about where exactly, since they are the state's lines, what we're responsible for and what the state is responsible for as relates to, capital projects and maintenance CapEx?
We've come to some heavier discussions with regards to heavier capital work, let's say.
Yep.
There's work on the pedestrian overpass bridge in Irwin Heights they wanted us to do. There was also some renovation and replacement and repair to some fencing by the depot they had asked us to do. They actually, after discussions with the DOT Rails supervisor that I deal with on a regular basis and have been now for 9 years, he took those projects and he had them done by the either Metro North or DOT Rails folks to take care of those quote-unquote capital projects in my eyes. There are maintenance items that we discuss all the time, repairs to concrete steps, railings, lighting, whatever it may be. Those are on a regular basis. I get updates every 2 weeks of things that they do find out there, and we correct them right away. So we have a great relationship with dealing with the lease because it's so vague. As we go forward with possibly a new lease into the future, we'll work on maybe defining that a little bit better. The only, the only deal that we made with the pedestrian overpass bridge is they asked if I would do some capital projects, at the Norotan station of equal value. I already have about $1 million worth of work that's planned in there over the next 2 years. They just asked if I could do at least $500,000 within the next year. And that was the commitment I made to them. So next year, I'll be paving the lots and putting some sidewalks in that will equal the value of the pedestrian repair work that they just did. But again, I already had it planned. They accepted that, and we're going to move forward. I thought it was a great compromise, rather than having me work on a pedestrian overpass bridge with the high voltage lines and the trains that connect Boston and New York, and you really don't want me out there doing that work.
And is there a timing plan for that?
For the pedestrian,
Yeah.
They finished it about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So they got the report at the beginning of the year and put stuff together. A little easier for them to shut down tracks and get flaggers out there and things. So I'm so glad that they took that over and was willing to compromise with them with regards to capital work.
Okay. Good. Any other questions on this transfer? Okay, I'll accept the motion to transfer $40,000 from the parking capital project fund to the Darien Railroad Station platform shelters acquisition installation. Dave moves, Rob seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
You got one more?
Yep. You'll tell me when it's time.
Okay.
Go. You're on.
Okay, next item is discuss and take action on a request to transfer $4,162 in unspent funds from the upgrade town hall heating to the Board of Finance capital reserve.
In October 2021, the Board of Finance approved a transfer of $25,509 to supplement the $170,000 that had already been appropriated through a bonding resolution to upgrade the town hall heating. The project is now done, and we have $4,162 that is unspent. So this is just a transfer to move it back to the reserve for capital non-recurring. We have already bonded the $170,000 portion.
So these are not bond proceeds?
Correct. These are unused RFCNRE transfer funds.
Any questions? Okay. Accept the motion to approve moving $4,162 from the town hall heating account back to the Board of Finance capital reserve. John moves. Dave seconds. All those in favor? Unanimous.
Aye.
Jump the gun there, Dan.
At this point, can we add the transfer that I sent around that was left off of the agenda?
Yep. Okay, I'd like a motion to add one additional transfer as item number 5, and that item will be the transfer of $20,000 from the Board of Finance reserve to the project account for the Hanson Road Bridge. Can I accept the motion to add that to the agenda? Dave moves, Rob seconds. All those in favor? Okay.
Aye.
Thanks, Ed.
No, thank you for adding it in. The transfer I'm looking for is the $20,000 for the Board of Finance Reserve. We are currently under design for the Hanson Road Bridge replacement, but what this funds will cover is 10 months of the plate rental that we have out there right now that's protecting the bridge. We use that plate to disperse a lot of the loads going across that bridge abutment. That's been compromised right now. I feel it's a safety measure that should remain in place until we do start doing the demolition. So we have about 10 months figured in. And currently in this account, we're about $5,000 overspent. So I'd like to make that up also. I rounded it up to $20,000 in case there are any other incidental costs as we go through this process before we start the construction.
There's another item related to Hanson County, to the Hanson Road Bridge on our agenda.
Mhm.
Okay, so we can talk about sort of the larger project in connection with that item. So are there any questions on this transfer?
No.
Okay, so I'll accept the motion to move $20,000 from the Board of Finance capital reserve to the Hanson Road Bridge project. Dave moves. Paul seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thanks. Okay. So the next item is discuss and take action on a request to amend the appropriation and bonding authorization to increase the amount by $2,357,300 to $4,697,300 for the sanitary system sewer project. So this is an existing project that we're increasing the size of, right?
Yes, that's correct. What you have in front of you is a resolution to pretty much put funds together for what I'll call the next portion of our project, our rehab work, our investigative work, our design work. So if you recall, a few years back, we had a resolution for almost $2.34 million. And what it was for is the I&I study and the sewer assessment that we did. That was worth about $700,000. From that assessment, from that report, we had direction and recommendations from our engineer on rehab work, and we broke it up into 3 phases. First phase was Old Kings Highway South. Those funds were ARPA funds to do the construction out there. But the design fees came out of this bonding. So what I'll try to do is kind of walk you through where I spent some of the money, but, some of the CCTV work that we do, we're required to do now. 10% a year of the 81 miles, I have to TV and clean to see if there's any defects. So, right now, we've done calendar year 22, calendar year 23 was just finished. And so far, with that money spent and the design fees, we've moved on to what I'll call phase 2 of the recommendations, or the rehab work. And we're just started that. It's about $1.6 million. It's going to take about a year. With that money in total, it took me to about $2.9 million. The current appropriation was only 2.3, so I was short about $600,000. And within the past couple of months, we were able to obtain ARPA funding to close that gap for myself. So right now, I have enough funding to do, the first report, phase 1 and phase 2, and the CCTV work. So I'm good right now. If I want to do phase 3 and start the second portion of the analysis of the town's sanitary sewer system, we only did a portion of it. We have to go to another section and do the same thing all over again. I need more bonding and more funding. Now, I've been in front of the sewer commission. They've approved me moving forward with this request. They understand what we're trying to do as far as removal of unwanted I&I or infiltration and inflow into our sanitary sewer system, because in the end, it's going to reduce the amount of flow that we send to the city of Stamford, which in turn will reduce what we pay them. So that's going to come off. You're going to see that start to happen right after we finish this second phase. And then we go to the third phase. So right now, what I'm looking for is to set myself up with funding to continue to do this work. And I thought this was a good time to do that. Phase 3 is going to start. I'm going to probably start working on the design of that, probably in March, April, or May of next year. I will need to design funds from this new bonding resolution, as well as the construction fees for it. I'm sorry, that's a lot to take in, but I'm trying to.
So this amount will basically get you through phase 2 and the design and possible work for phase 3?
It'll get me through the engineering phase 2, right, the inspection. It'll get me through the phase 3 rehab work that we had already been recommended we should do. It'll also take care of next year's CCTV work that we have to do in accordance with our recommendations made by the DEEP and Save the Sound folks.
So the CCTV work, that needs to be done every year?
Yes.
For how long?
Well, I think 10% a year, you're going to need at least 10 years. After that, they say you can evaluate your system to where there are some sections relatively new. You don't have to be there every 10 years. If you find sections that do have fat soils and grease to the pipe, or defects in the pipe, or show some type of infiltration, you'll go there more often. So you start to rate them again, so you're not just keep going 10% every year. That's not a smart way to look at your system, and I think it's a waste of money. So you evaluate, and then you go back, look at the sections that need more attention. The downtown area is a perfect example. Between all the restaurants that are out there, though we have a good fog program, not everything is caught. Those areas need more attention. You go out to a subdivision that's just been built with PVC pipe and new manholes, most likely you're not going to have to go back there every 10 years.
And just to be clear, so that everyone is clear on this, when you guys do the camera work and the cleaning, you do any repairs that you find that are needed along the way, right? So it's also maintaining the sewer system at its optimal condition so that we don't have a bigger problem of some kind at any point.
That's correct. That's correct. And to use our new first selection to be as transparent as possible, we found about 3 so far. And we went out there immediately and repaired them.
Are these 3 problems in the pipes, or 3 areas where other liquids were coming into the pipes?
Problems with the pipe itself, the structural integrity of the pipe.
Where you could risk a rupture.
Are any of these amounts recoverable from those hooked up to the sewer?
Excuse me?
when I had a sewer, I got a bill every year.
Yeah.
Will the amounts that are expended to maintain the system be recoverable from people who are using the system?
Well, Jen, on the bond, maybe,
Yeah.
is this the question?
I don't-
The debt service related to the bonds that we're going to issue, are those paid out of the sewer fund from sewer charges or from the general fund out of tax?
It's budgeted in the general fund, but each year in the sewer fund, we put in a contribution from the sewer fund to the general fund to cover the debt service, this type of work.
So these are paid by sewer fees, which are allocated by the amount of water you use, so it's,
Good, perfect.
and this CCTV, this is not on Channel 79, I assume?
You don't want it to be on Channel 79. It's not something you want to see.
Approximately how much a year do we pay to Stanford?
Almost $3 million. Our budget is a little over 4.
To Paul's question, like, if you had to compare us to other communities, if you look at the 21,000 people, number of homes, whatever bathrooms that we have, is the amount that we're shipping to Stanford, does that suggest there's a lot of stuff that's leaking into it that's not waste? So therefore there's money to be saved?
Every year I have to do a rate comparison when I project my budget versus our fees. And then I go in for a rate increase. I was fortunate in my first 4 years not to ask for a rate increase at all. If I could go back and tell that at Gentile back then, you should have done a little bit of a step increase as you go, but that's hindsight. But during that process, I get to look at the water usage for all the properties that pay a sewer use bill. I also get to compare it to the amount of flow we send to the city of Stanford, and I get to see the difference. And generally speaking, we send almost 800 million gallons a year to the city of Stanford. Our water use is about 450. So there's 350 million gallons worth of I&I going through our system right now, roughly speaking.
So we could maybe cut half, almost.
Yeah, will
I
they
think that would be
increase-
aggressive. They say a third.
Yeah, will they increase their rates to make up for the reduction?
What's that?
Don't give
Will
them
Stanford
ideas.
just increase their rates if we reduce what we ship to them?
Ours is a fixed number based on percentage of flow that we send to them, based on the overall flow that goes through their treatment plant. So if we reduce our flow, right now, we're stuck at 12. We can't go below that. But once we get it down to that level, it'll be hitting a new contract negotiation, which I'll be requesting now we are able to go below that, to keep up with our betterments and the fact that they're expanding and growing over in their city.
It's a silly question, but is there a way to analyze the composition of the flow so that in fact, because you should really only be paying for the amount of sewerage that they have to process?
I think the composition is an easy way to describe it, but I prefer to tell you is, if you were to open up on any given day a manhole in a section of town at 2 o'clock in the morning, you should see nothing in that pipe, a trickle. During rainstorms, at 2 o'clock in the morning, we see rivers coming through them. We see about 25% of the invert of these pipes are flowing, and they should not be. That's the best I can do with an analysis like that.
Okay. So, bond resolution? Okay, so this is, we're going to pass both an appropriation, increased appropriation and increased bonding resolution, right?
You're going to pass a resolution to amend the original resolution, which appropriates and authorizes bonding.
Got it. Okay. So I'll take a motion to, for the resolution to amend the resolution adopted on October 19th, 2020, appropriating $2.34 million for the Sanitary Sewer System Project and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $2.340 million to meet that said appropriation, to increase the appropriation and bond authorization by $2,357,300 to $4,697,300. Dave moves.
I don't know that math works, but.
Rob seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks. So, to John's earlier comment, this is the actual resolution, Jen, that the RTM will vote on, right?
Yep.
Okay, the next item is to discuss and take action on a request to authorize an appropriation and bonding authorization in the amount of $2,067,250 for the Hanson Road Bridge replacement.
Okay. So we are looking at the bonding for the overall project for the Hanson Road Bridge. We, of course, are right in the middle of doing the design work for this project, but let me bring you up to speed on where we are. We've already met with the DEEP and the Army Corps of Engineers to get their recommendations and their special conditions for design. We have submitted our hydraulic analysis to the Army Corps. We are starting to put together a plan for meetings with EPC and planning and zoning, because we have to go to both of them. We are currently meeting with, or planning to meet with, the neighbors. We have shown them plans already with possibilities that their property may be impacted, whether with a temporary easement or a permanent easement. There are 3 properties owners over in that area that we need to speak with and come to arrangements with if we are to implement the design that we've come up with. We are currently and have just hired an appraiser to go and appraise the properties for what they call damages due to the temporary and permanent easements. So that's where we are right now. The design is approximately 80 to 90% complete. We don't want to finish the design now until we start to get through the rest of the boards, in case there's any other special conditions. Generally with EPC, you have either landscaping issues or things like that you have to put into your plan, any type of offsets or setbacks that they want you to honor with regards to the streams and things like that. So that's where we stand right now. To give you just a ballpark of what the costs are that got us to the 2 million. Chairman, I did get your email. Hopefully this will address a lot of the questions. Just so you know, part of the application, and I didn't say this, but part of the application to the state local bridge program is that you must provide them with an estimate, right? It's rough as it may be, you have to give them something. And this was part of the application, and unless you are, I'm not sure that you're aware of, but we were awarded the funding from the state local bridge program. The estimate for 2 million, they will honor 50% of that. It's a 50-50 matching grant. So, but part of the process is that you have to appropriate all of the money, and then it's reimbursed. So, the original preliminary engineering was about $178,000. That is reimbursable cost. The right-of-way costs are estimated at 20. I assume they're going to grow a little bit, maybe to 40 or 50, but half of that.
Is right away mean easement?
That's correct. That's correct. And anything that you use to get there, whether it's legal fees for your easements, appraiser costs, and then the actual cost itself for damages. There is no municipal-owned utility relocations, though there is a water main to be relocated. It is currently along the south bridge abutment in the middle of the river. You can actually see it from the roadway. Aquarion would like to relocate that. We're asking that they do it underneath the new culvert / bridge, if you will, so that you can't see it. Generally, they'll try to attach it to the bridge face downstream. We are trying to, and it sounds like we've been successful, to get them to relocate it underneath the bridge so that we don't have to look at that. The estimated construction cost was almost $1.5 million. There's construction engineering, which is inspections, construction management, and material testing of about $220,000, so that's during construction. We did estimate a 10% contingency for construction costs, about $150,000. That gets us up to just over $2 million for this project.
I'm sorry, this is Pan. I have a question. The 220, was that part of the 1.5 million, or was that in addition to the 1.5 million?
It's in addition to the $1.5 million.
And what was that specifically for? I just missed that.
Construction administration, material testing.
Finished? Okay. Thank you.
Sure. I think the last piece of the project that we should talk about is we have currently gone in front of the Legal Traffic Authority to ask for a roadway closure. Our construction project schedule shows us working out there for about 5 months. So we asked for their permission to do it for 5 months. I anticipate that schedule is going to be shortened, or the construction will allow us to at least open up the roadway while we work on the bridge abutments facings. They're going to be all stone faced. Doesn't mean you couldn't have the road opened while you were working on those bridge abutments. So that we currently have in place. We are looking to try to get this done before school opens, September next year. So we have a pretty aggressive schedule right now. Everything has to seem to fall in place. Thought this was an appropriate time to come and at least set the bonding up for it.
With respect to the easements, the costs that you have in, are these temporary, assumed to be temporary or permanent easements?
They're both. They're both. Some of the end treatments for the bridge abutments as you drive to them are now going to be guardrails. They are allowing us, the DOT is allowing us to use the Merritt Parkway design, if you will, the wooden rails. The neighbors seem to be in favor of that also, but they do have to be extended and then curled back a little bit, which puts them onto the property. Some of the property lines out there are a little dysfunctional. The road is not in the exact center. The right-of-way is not 50 feet wide. So we have to deal with that a little bit, along with the property on the golf course too.
So we're going to approve the maximum amount of the bonding resolution, and then once we get the grant, we can bring it back down or cancel the...
Right, so what we would do is you have to authorize the full amount for our purposes anyway, so that Ed can spend it. We need the full appropriation, and we won't be borrowing until work proceeds, and we'll have an idea of exactly how much our reimbursement will be. And so we'll only borrow, the appropriation will be the full 2 million, and it'll have 2 funding sources. We'll borrow the difference between what's spent and the grant.
And do they reimburse us at the end when we're all done, or is it along the way when you incur?
I believe because of the short time window, it'll be at the end of the project when we close out. The other piece is there is a what they call a supplemental application you have to submit. It's a revision to your estimate. As you get closer and closer and you finish your design and you maybe even obtain the bids, you can actually submit that supplemental estimate to possibly revise what they are covering for you. So if for whatever reason the prices have gone up, they'll revise what they'll cover. So that 2 million, for instance, could be 2.5 million. Or if it's less, it could be 1.8 million. But that's the chance that you adjust your numbers appropriately because you have a firm design, estimates to do construction management, and you've done your right-of-way work already. All those numbers are hard numbers.
John?
Speaking of road closures, I think
Dan with another question. You mentioned that we have been awarded a grant, 50 to cover 50%, but we have to go through all the appropriation exercises. Is that an accurate statement, that we have been awarded a grant?
Yes.
And who is that grant from?
State?
Of Connecticut.
The state, the Department of Transportation?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, John?
Okay, speaking of road closures, will the design of the new bridge help to mitigate the flood problems on that road?
The design of the bridge, there's a couple parts on that road that need some attention. For large flows, it just can't handle it. They overtop. There was some water designed to come over the top of that bridge. The design now keeps the water in the channel as required by the DEP and the Army Corps with a 1-foot freeboard. So everything is supposed to stay in the channel. So that was the improvement. The idea though is not to create or add additional flow downstream. So everything has to stay in the channel. We've analyzed that part of it too. The object here is to make no adverse impact downstream after you replace and repair the bridge.
Can any work be done upstream to help mitigate the problem that occurs at the bridge?
I can't answer that. I really didn't look at the impacts other than the Stony Brook coming to that section of road. That's the section we did look at. There's another tributary to the west,
Right.
about 700 feet away, 1,000 feet away, that comes off the golf course in that area. We did not look at the flows in that area at this time.
Okay.
Questions? Okay. I'm going to entertain a motion to approve the resolution appropriating $2,067,250 for costs of construction related to the replacement of the Hanson Road Bridge and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $2,067,250 to meet said appropriation. And before I entertain a motion to move that, Jen, Section 1, are we 100% confident that that covers things even like easements, everything that might have to be that might need to be spent in connection with this?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to move that. Dave moves. Second. Rob? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks. Unanimous. Ed, thank you.
Thank you very much.
This is Dan. Before Ed leaves, Ed, thank you for your detailed answer to my personal question on this matter. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay. So next up is the financial report.
So we're striking number 7 because we already did that, right?
Yes.
Right.
We moved that up.
Financial report, just a couple of things. It says that it's through October 31st. There's someone in my office who's been out on medical leave for the last 4 weeks, so we're a little behind on posting. So property taxes are through September. Investment income is through September. Those are the big ones. But on property taxes, through September, we've collected 53% of the budget. Last year, in October, we collected about $322,000. So you could add that on there. We'll be just over $82 million collected this year. We've been on track with prior years, so that's a pretty good estimate for October. On investment income, we've collected just over $1.2 million on a budget of $1,750,000. And our two big money makers in October brought in another $205,000. That's not reflected here, so we're over 1.4 through October.
Jen, just help me with the town accounting stuff, right? Since we are clearly going to way overperform on the investment income, is there any benefit to us in terms of how we monitor and manage the budget projection of the fund balance? Anything like that that would behoove us to, I would say, update this estimate at this point in time?
No, because overall the way it'll work is all of our revenues together support all of our expenditures together. So however we end up the year, revenues in excess of expenditures or vice versa, which I don't anticipate, that just adds to fund balance. So as we go into the budget, we always take a look at what is our projected fund balance. This will be bumping up what our projected fund balance is.
Okay.
Which would mean when we're looking at a budget for next year, if we look at the amount of fund balance that we might want to apply to capital projects.
Right, we can drive this back into next year's budget.
Yeah, we can plow it back in.
Yep. Good.
What did you say brought in the extra 200?
It's our sweep account, had earned about 162 in October, and Stiff brought in about 43,000.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, the sweep account was a new advent this year. They just put it in place this year,
Yeah.
so there's no way she could have budgeted for it previously.
Yeah.
Yep.
She sent around an update, I think, earlier today to you all that talks
Yeah,
about all that.
That has a breakdown of the 1.4, right?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, because I thought we spent quite a bit, I wouldn't say quite a bit of time, but a decent amount of time kind of laying out cash projections. And then, you know, if you guys remember, like bucketized it
Yep.
by month and then put a rate to it. And we're at $1.4 million already. Like, I felt like we kind of tightened that number up a little bit. It's kind of crazy.
Well,
How did we miss it?
on that number, we also made the assumption that rates were gonna decline each month. We had them going down a little bit, and that hasn't happened.
It's not a terrible thing, it's just, you kind of sit there and we look probably 2 or 3 months down the road and say, where do we go wrong, right? I don't
think,
cash
with
flows
the
in there,
sweep
you know,
at,
I
the
think we
sweep's
did a
at
decent-
5.2%.
We assumed rates were
really
coming
good
down
work.
25 basis points.
Yeah. Like-
Sorry,
like,
we're
I
assuming
think
they're
we-
coming down 10 basis points per month.
Right.
Yeah. And I think our original number was like $1.9 million, I think, and we took it down to $1.75 million, and we were like all comfortable with that number.
And
It's
the
just-
sweep's at 5.2%. We didn't have
It was Kentucky
anything
windage.
projected at that rate.
It really was, when
Yeah.
it came down to it.
And listen, we've spent a little bit less on HHR. That
Yeah, we're
hasn't
drawing
really
that
sort
down
of-
slower.
Yeah, that hasn't really
Yeah.
kicked off yet, although there's more percolating around on that right now, so it's,
And you said
ARPA's
the-
drawing down slower because we assumed it was gonna be a little more
and
rapid.
you said the
just for
sweep is at
projection.
5.2, Jeff?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
The only one that I want to call your attention to on the revenue side is the town clerk revenue. We are not going as well as we have in the past, which were really elevated numbers. So compared to last year through October, we're about $120,000 less. And last year we brought in $1,849,000. Our budget this year is just under 1.8, so that's going to be one where we might be a little bit shy, but we'll see how the winter months go.
Just volume of transactions?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I heard overall the real estate market is the fewest transactions since like 2010. There's just nothing going on.
And are these primarily property transfers or mortgage?
Conveyance fees from property transfers make up a big portion of that. The recording fee is minimal
We'll
compared
have
to
a big property
conveyance.
transfer in December, so,
It's $10.
the other one. So at the same time that the town buys the traffic circle, the Zigglers are selling their property, so it's all happening at the same time, so.
I thought you meant like we're having another big transaction. I was like,
Yes, I assume
I
you,
was wondering where this was going.
did you wire out the $5 yet?
I have not been asked to.
Okay.
But overall, on the revenue side, that investment income is going to offset anything that we might be down on town clerk. And then even building permits, we're in a little bit of a holding pattern on the redevelopment projects, but Corbin Phase 2 and Heights Crossing are expected to kick off soon, so we should see more permit revenue coming in from those soon. On the expenditure side for the general fund, everything is going as expected. The police department, as Captain Hudema said, they had a resignation, but it's being filled very quickly, so they're not carrying vacancies like they have in the past. So they're much more in line with budget than they have been in the last few years.
And Jen, the debt service number is more than half so far. That's just a timing issue with the.
That's just-
With the principal payment. right?
Exactly, that's just the way our debt happens to be timed for payments. And we've been working on getting that a little more balanced so that more is in the second half of the year.
Okay.
Page 4, the state revenues. The one that I want to call your attention to is right in the middle, MRSA sales tax sharing. We brought in about $180,000 last year. We budgeted 0 this year on the recommendation of CCM because this is not a guaranteed grant. It's that they distribute sales tax revenue that's required to go into a fund used for 2 other purposes before distribution through this program. So it's not a guarantee, but on that one alone, we're $200,000 better than budget for intergovernmental revenue. It's one that I think we should look at when we get into the fiscal '25 budget, putting some kind of a nominal amount in there, but I don't think we would want to budget to this level because it's not a guarantee.
What did we get last year, do we know?
About 180, 186, something like
So
that.
is there a steady, it sounds like we're getting a steady flow every year, or is it just the last
2021 was the first year we got it,
Oh,
so it's tough to see if there's a trend. And if we go into a recession, because it's based off of sales tax, there'd probably be less available for distribution.
I think you're right, Jen. I think we draw,
We should put
Phenomenal.
something in there,
Yeah.
but more than zero, but not as much as we've been getting, I think.
who owns general fund this year?
What?
Who owns the general fund for budgeting? I'll throw 50. Let's say throw 50.
Contingency accounts on page 5, the most activity is in the Board of Finance Capital Reserve with what you just approved tonight. The available is about $393,000.
Jen, are we able to, remind me, our contingency inside the operating budget, are we allowed to, we can use that for capital if needed, right?
If we needed to, yeah. Yeah, we could use it as, do a transfer to capital from there.
And on the, Paul, anything to add on the special ed excess cost reimbursement? Any new numbers coming out from Hartford?
Now, they'd gone to the new system of 85%, 88, and 91 for reimbursement based on your socioeconomic group, and we obviously get the 85%. But based on calls we've made to the state and Trumbull, that those percentages may not hold because although the amount dedicated to special ed excess cost had gone up from 141 million to 156 million, it all depends upon how many kids and how severe the need. And so those numbers could come down.
Is there any talk of the 156 going up any further or no?
No, because it took 10 years to get it to go up.
Yeah.
It was frozen at 141 for about a decade.
Page 7, the sewer fund. This is another one, the current sewer service charges. Those come through the tax collector's office, so we haven't booked October yet, which is the bulk of their collections. So even though it shows year-to-date collected is 73,000, or 74,000, last year in October, they collected 2.5 million, and there's no reason to believe that this year would be any different. So that's really much closer to half or more of the budget collected, most likely through October. Parking fund is going along well. We're seeing activity tick up a little bit. We're still not quite pre-pandemic levels. I don't know if we ever will be. This might be the new normal that we're at for monthly averages.
So we're about 20%, sorry.
Yeah.
Is the permits, is this the time where we remind the public to please make sure you pay for your permit or you
Yes.
lose it?
Yep.
Okay.
And that one as well, it says 63,000 collected, but there's a delay in recording the October online. I think permit renewals were very robust in October. And then we have on page 9, the Recreation Program Fund. That's that new one that we set up a year ago. It's working out very well. And then the Great Island Management Fund. Overall, we've collected $317,000 in rent, and to date, we've spent $179,000 on various facility repair and maintenance related to those properties. Active bonded projects. We're working on kind of the last round of invoices for Ox Ridge. So those expenditures are mostly done. We do have some pending state grants, and more than likely we'll be able to, depending on retainage and what the numbers come out as, once we get our final state grant numbers and figure out final retainage numbers to be paid, we may have some excess borrowings that we can reallocate to another active project.
And so Jen, even some of these bond resolutions were just passed, like for the bridge, we could transfer that 1.7 million to that project?
Technically, we could. For budgeting purposes, it's better if we can keep them school to school, town to town, just because we do separate debt service by purpose. And it's just a little cleaner.
Yep.
But if there were nowhere else to send it to, if we didn't have an active school project, we could absolutely send it to any of those other ones.
Sorry, can I go back 1 second?
Mhm.
What have we spent $179,000 on for facility repair and maintenance at Great Island?
Like a property management company There's the active rentals, so odds and ends of repairs there. The big thing is about $25,000 per month for the property management and maintenance contract that we have.
They're basically the mowing and so forth.
Yeah.
It's done by a third party
Got it.
for this first year. There's been a few roofs that need to be fixed, a few fences for one of the pools, things like that. I do expect like that, as John said, that'll start to pick up the cadence a bit as the Great Island Commission starts to make some more decisions and so forth, given that the access is solved or will hopefully be solved on December 11th.
Great. Sorry, thank you.
You're welcome. So what will come off next month at the bottom of page 10, the town hall heating improvements, because that's done and we've just closed that out. On page 15 is the detail for what we've spent out of the Great Island Bond Fund so far. This month, we had about $88,000 of expenditures out of that kind of post-closing $6 million additional that we borrowed. We did just, I think we got bids in, or we're getting bids in on several items, so I expect those expenditures to start increasing on remediation and some other items. And then, beginning on page 16 is ARPA. What's highlighted in gray are projects that are complete that I spoke about earlier. So between those and some active projects that can release some funds, we have about $95,000 that can go back into contingency. Like I said, we'll be working with the committee to identify reallocation opportunities for that. And now that you've approved the PD locker room, we'll start seeing that on this list. But overall, we've spent in the last month since the report, $297,000. We do have $1.2 million encumbered, which left us with about $3.4 million unobligated as of November 16th. So we have another year and a month to obligate. Kate and I were talking about timing. Probably in March, we'll sit down with all of the departments who have active projects, really nail down where they are. Probably do that again in June or July, and very frequently thereafter to make sure that we get everything obligated by December 31st.
I mean, like some of these, like the pod and the box,
So in that case, they have the trailer. They are working on all of the equipment and items that are going to go in the trailer. They're working on acquiring those.
You
So-
did, sorry. Given that we're trying to use the money, right, will the balance of the PD locker room go to the top of the list as like a suggestion for?
Yeah, depending on what else Kate has heard from other departments who may need excess fund, additional funds for something that's already approved, or if there's something that we see in the budget that we could pull forward, because we're getting the budget requests in now.
Jen, what's an EMS fly car?
That is like an SUV that responds first before the actual ambulance can get there.
Thank you.
But ARPA is definitely at the top of the list. The Department of Treasury has provided a little more information on what's deemed obligated and how that's going to work. There's very few circumstances after December 1st where you can change either a vendor, like even if a vendor goes out of business, you can get a new vendor, but you can only spend the amount that you had already obligated, even if the new vendor says it's going to cost them more. So there's a lot of challenges. So not only do we need to have things obligated, we need to make sure that any potential change orders are already signed and part of the contract before December 31st. And as much as possible, I would prefer that funds actually be spent before December 31st of 2024.
Yep. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
almost done. Review and approval of minutes.
Before we do that, could I bring up one other thing? As we're about to be rolling into the budget season here, this is my, we always run, we have a minimum floor target for the unassigned fund balance, but we've been historically running close to the 18% area. I was just thinking that from a process standpoint, instead of, we get to the end of the year, the budget, and go, okay, how much of the budget do we want to use? So every year we're like making that decision, right? I was thinking that from a process standpoint, maybe it would make some sense to pick a target level that we expect to manage to, right? Whether that's 16%, 15.5%, whatever that number might be, it sort of takes, it sets the expectation of where we are and where we're going every year, so that we are consistent when we start out the year at the same fixed level each time.
I think last year, we actually sort of chose that number to remain at like 17.6%, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was we had the multiple scenarios, and there was a decision based on where it was expected to leave us.
Yeah.
But to David's point, there's, I think I've mentioned it before, and then it just hasn't been doable. There's kind of a new way of thinking about fund balance and getting your target. Not so much that it's a percentage of your budget, but saying what are the potential draws on fund balance? What amounts are they possibly going to be? And, kind of assigning a probability to them to mathematically get to this for our town, our circumstances, the challenges we face. This is the right fund balance number for us.
Excuse me, Ken, this is Dan. You're talking about new thinking at rating agencies with respect to fund balance?
No, it's more GFOA. So
Okay.
it's GFOA sets a best practice, and there's been a lot of discussion because they had a percentage in there. And then Moody's was kind of saying, oh, well, most of our AA's are at that percent. And it's, well, is it because Moody's wants them at that percent, or because GFOA has that as their best practice? And so the idea of a percent, nobody has a really good reason for a particular percent target. So instead, they've taken this approach of each community is different, they face different challenges. So what's right for your community? What are the challenges you face? What's the likelihood? How much could they cost you? So what should you have in your reserve? I don't think we're going to get there for this budget, but I would prefer to spend our time and energy on kind of that new way of thinking.
Okay.
I think it would be more beneficial to us to think through our unique circumstances in this community.
Yeah, that approach actually sounds very intuitive to me. I think that'd be great when we can get to it. As always, I was just fishing for a way to have a process to minimize the impact on the mill rate every year by having a way to manage it. But it sounds like I intuitively your way of assigning a probability to likely events and likely needs makes a lot of sense to me.
So maybe to David's point, and Jen, I'm not sure if this is something you can track, but like, do we have built into the budget, or do we somehow automatically track sort of large mid-year appropriations? And I'm thinking about things like during COVID, when we needed to appropriate certain dollars to the Board of Ed, thinking about sort of capital expenditures, other things that have kind of come up. We maybe get a run rate of what those things have done, and then maybe in terms of, if there's a way to kind of look at the various operating budgets, even if it's down to the department, at the department level. Like, right now, investment earnings are up, town clerk revenues are down a little bit, and Board of Ed is $900,000 over budget. Is there a way we can look at, like, historically, have there been certain overages, budget overages at the end of the year?
That one's a little tough because we are required to get every line item within budget. But we have the history of what we've pulled from operating contingency. We have the history by individual approval of what's been pulled from fund balance. So we can, and I think we've done that every couple of years. We've said, here's all the historical draws on those two categories. But I think when we talk about fund balance, there's also just beyond what we fund for capital or mid-year needs, There's, for storm, emergency storm type items where we have to front the cash for debris removal and that sort of thing until we get reimbursed by FEMA. That's one of our most common uses of fund balance. We don't appropriate it, but we draw the cash from our fund balance to support those expenses until we get reimbursed. So I think that would be one category, is kind of disasters or emergencies. Kind of our usual mid-year capital or new project type draws, that would be one. And then I think potential revenue shortfalls could be one. But I think that's where I would like to go with fund balance. I think it would give us a better number than just either a band of percents or a target percent. I think it has a little more justification to it.
And given our bonding activity, kind of coming up this year and so forth, are the rating agencies going to be sync on that? Because I don't think we don't want to sort of follow one process over here if the rating agencies would take a negative reaction to it.
So on my GFOA committee, there is a representative from Moody's, and he is very clear of Moody's doesn't support a specific percent. They look at AAAs tend to be at this percent, AAs tend to be at this percent, but Moody's doesn't have a percent in mind that they want to see. They are interested more in what was your thinking behind what level you're setting. I think going through the process that I talked about shows really good governance, that we're thinking about our particular situation, and they're very interested in trends. So over the last few years, every year we're adding to fund balance. That's a positive to them. Even if we had a really good fund balance, but we kept drawing it down for the last 5 years, that's a little bit of a negative view to them. So they look more at trends and what the governance and the thinking is behind a fund balance policy that we have.
Okay. Special committees? Rob, John?
Wait, you have your minutes.
Oh, I thought we were.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you.
You got me sideways there, David. Okay. One set of minutes to approve from our regular meeting on October 17th. Any comments or edits? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the October 17th minutes. Dave moves. John seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Unanimous?
I'm gonna abstain because I wasn't here. Or do I just
I think
say?
we can still vote
Yeah,
yes.
sounds great.
Okay.
Okay.
So
good.
it's unanimous.
But you watch the videos.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah. They look
Okay,
good. You
so
look good on TV.
next is special assignments. Rob, anything on your
Actually,
side?
Because we did amend, when I missed last meeting, I did watch the movie on tape. Did we can you send us a new calendar for the meetings for, do we
Yes.
have that? That'd be great. Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry.
I don't have anything on audit unless Jen, you had an update, or John, I know you talked to somebody in audit, right?
Had the fraud
Oh, that's right.
discussion.
So update on audit.
Are they done? Are they done?
They are not done yet. I actually still owe them the statistics tables. Those will go out next week. I haven't gotten the tables for the MD&A yet. So I think it's going to be a bit of a crunch in December. It was just a new way of doing it because their timing is off because they're short-staffed. I think I've mentioned that a couple times already. So it's been just a little different process. But I don't think it's, it's not in review or anything yet. I will say that I do expect that we're going to have one finding in the management letter related to ARPA. There was a requirement in, I don't know if it's all federal grants or just for ARPA, that we missed, that every vendor that we use, we have to go onto a federal website and confirm that they're not debarred from conducting business with federal funds. So we missed that on early ones. We went back, none of the vendors that we used are debarred, and we have a process now for the departments to send information to us about quotes and vendors and all that stuff. So we're doing that now, but more than likely we're gonna have a finding on that. And one other thing, there was a The new GASB standard for subscription-based IT agreements
96.
is kind of similar to the lease standard. We had to go through all of our subscription-based IT agreements. The auditors made a decision of whether or not all of the ones that fall under that category were material. They determined that they were not material, which then they said we can present value the future payments and do an entry on our side, and I was opposed to that. So there's going to be an entry that we don't do. It's just a, proposed adjusting journal entry. No impact to us. One thing that I did ask them is how close we were to the materiality threshold. Because if we're going to go over it next year, we might as well just do it this year. And they said we're nowhere near the materiality threshold. So we would have to add a lot of subscription-based IT agreements to go over that materiality threshold. And I think some of it is, in my own little mind, I'm protesting the fact that we have to do this because I don't agree with the standard. And
It's in a little mind. I agree with you.
and they
'Cause I
said that
had to do it.
many other communities aren't reaching the threshold and they're also not doing the entry.
If you PV back the lease payments to put on the liability side, what exactly do we put on the asset side?
The same amount so that it balances.
But are we PVing back like the happiness created by the software? Or? I mean,
It's,
It's full employment for auditors.
yeah.
yeah.
Can you not respond that you're simply going to monitor this
Sorry, John.
in every possible way, to the degree that it should ever even begin to approach materiality,
Then we
you
will.
would change your accounting?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice job pushing back.
Yes.
Really.
I'm sure Gatsby really
We
cares.
stand with you.
Anything else? John, anyone else?
Well, Jen tells me that the DPW union did in fact finally vote and approve the contract and RTM has done the same.
Got it.
So it should be all behind us.
Okay. On Great Island Committee, I think John really covered it all. So I imagine that will start heating up here soon. David?
On HHR, we got the bids back. On the good news side, we did get better bid participation than we had over the summer. Surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, they were in conversations with multiple vendors just a few days before the bids were due, who said they were going to bid, who did not bid. We had better bid participation, still not quite at where we would have opted for, but we have more than one bidder on every single trade package for each of the schools. So that's better than where we were earlier in the summer. We're not really prepared to give out any hard numbers yet because they were in the process. My calendar blows up with the amount of scope review meetings that are being held with various subcontractors to review to make sure that what they bid on is what we think they're supposed to be doing, kind of thing, to make sure that their bid was valid and they're going to still stay in. There was one particular area where there was a vendor who was so much below the next bidder that there was some concern that they may end up they didn't really bid the right job. So when they do scope review, they may drop as opposed to us being able to use them. So the numbers are, I would say cautiously, somewhat better than over the summer, but not great. So the long and short is, the committee expects to be back before the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance in December to seek a supplemental appropriation for the school project.
Okay. Paul, pension, anything?
Nope.
Okay. Chairman's report, I would just say we're about to go into budget season. Board of Selectmen, Board of Ed are both working on their budgets now. The Board of Ed has had a few meetings. They've been discussing kind of, where they're trying to give some guidance in terms of where they expect the superintendent to come out. As you know, there were a few sort of mid-year adjustments last year in terms of security and so forth. So that's, that's coming forward fully in this year. As I mentioned, this year, some of the special education spending is higher than what they expected. And certainly they have, this will be the second year of the new teacher's contract and the first year of the new administrator's contract, which has been approved. I don't think it's been put in front of the RTM yet. That'll probably be in January.
I had no idea.
So,
Is there a reason that the education budget, did you just say, was running behind average pace?
yeah, I think in our budget, in terms of what it shows in terms of drawdown, that's different than what Rich is sort of projecting over the entire year. So,
And ours is just truing up with what they've already run through their side. They then have to share it with us and we have to book it on our side. So any numbers that come out of the Board of Ed Finance Committee and Rich's projections are the numbers you should go by.
yeah, and I think you guys should all be getting those. He puts together a simple memo, 2-page memo in the beginning, so it goes through kind of where the overages are. So nothing else from the chairman's side. New business, anyone? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, it's big.
Sorry, Rob moves, Dave seconds. All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, Dan. Have a good Thanksgiving.